Largely self-explanatory, right? And actually, we have invited the MCA group representatives here too. So actually, it's kind of topical. Everything on this agenda kind of relates to this anyway. Most of you in this room have heard about this housing element review, some concern about allocation of sites in this particular local area. And as far as the fiscal impacts, which is the only thing that this body has any interest in whatsoever, just to give you a quick recap for those who were not following the process in the last year, 12 months. July of 2012 is when this first all began with a request from CSD taxpayer for the scope of EIR to include fiscal impacts, net fiscal impacts, which is standard for EIRs when you're doing a county policy. So it was requested, and then it was not done. And then flash forward through the process. There were comments throughout the record, as you may or may not know, from this particular area at CSD taxpayers about over-allocation of sites here. You were requested at your March meeting to maybe contribute to a Grassetti review, which LVHA participated in, which also revealed unstudied net fiscal impacts to local service areas. So further on the calendar after March, the communities did fund that. And the net fiscal impacts were found to be even worse from this county proposed policy because Damon just left, but there was no side-by-side cumulative impact study for 610 additional units being added to Santa Fe within our shared local services for public safety, fire, and ambulance, which we're also looking at the agenda today. So we did discuss this with supervisors at the very end, and it was actually Supervisor Adams did actually have, was very kind to allow County Council to also respond to some CSD-based taxpayer requests for understanding the scope of this EIR that was being approved, and would the CSD have an opportunity for a net fiscal impact analysis on an application-by-application basis in future, which is, I think, how you guys already know is normally the way it's done. Well, here's the deal. We actually had in writing a response from County Council saying, no, not necessarily, we'll figure that out later. There may or there may not ever be a net fiscal impact analysis done on an application-by-application basis for all the sites pre-approved in the SEIR. Very long story short, it's hundreds within our immediate local service area, tax area, and these are state required not to be paying funds into the revenue here, but we are going to have an obligation to attend to those households. Ergo, we have received the notice from this MCA group, which has challenged the omissions, read the writ. It's clear the CSD is one of the direct beneficiaries of this action in the sense that a net fiscal impact study is either going to be done or be promised to be done in the future, and so I think it's appropriate for your board to consider the fiscal benefits of having this proceed in their donation request. There. That's why we wrote the letter.
Give us your thank you.
Yeah.
Could you identify yourself just for a second?
Oh,
I know you, Liz, but I didn't know those two.
Oh, okay, sorry. These are from the MCA. This is Nan Kurtzman from the MCA group, Sharon Hall, and if you haven't met our president, Bruce. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Sorry.
Thanks, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Marine Community Alliance. I didn't.
The long and short of it is I don't think it's appropriate for the community services to contribute to this. I think that the action's been put forward in court. It will succeed on its own legal merits, not whether the district's name is anywhere attached. And the question the board has to ask, is this a proper use of the taxpayer funds? We're supposed to be using our taxpayer funds for providing our basic services. What you have here is an action trying to influence a political issue, political being issues arising from the exercise of governmental powers, and issues that are really not within our jurisdiction and our charter. So then who benefits from our channeling taxpayer monies to these people? Well, then the people who are behind this have their expenses defrayed to some extent. And is that really what you want to be doing with taxpayer funds? I don't say that it's without merit. I just don't think that it's appropriate for you to decide on behalf of the community that this is an appropriate use of their tax funds.
How much are they asking for? May I ask?
Oh, they're here, I think,
The District 1 funding target is 100,000, and we would like to ask CSD to donate voluntary donation of 50,000.
$50,000.
Yes.
yeah.
It's 10% of a new fire truck, everybody.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
I'm gonna thank you for clarifying. Is there, I guess we could do this two ways. Are there any, I'm actually gonna just ask for a motion because just to clarify for the new board members, we usually don't have, discussion should come under a motion, and there's no need for discussion if we don't have a motion. So if somebody wants to entertain, we will entertain a motion.
I move a motion to approve or reject.
We don't have to approve, we don't have to have a motion to reject.
Okay.
We just have to have a motion if somebody wants to move forward with support.
Discussion or,
You need a motion before you discuss, under Robert's rules. Otherwise, we're all out of order.
okay.
I move that if a straw poll of the board indicates an interest in pursuing this donation, and only if, then we submit the question to county council of whether or not this is an appropriate use of our funds.
So is there anyone want to second that as a motion?
I second that.
Okay, so we're in discussion about that particular motion. Sorry, 1 second.
Well, so, next step, take a straw poll.
Okay.
In favor
Restate.
of, restate my motion. If a majority of the board on a straw poll is in favor of pursuing making a substantial donation, that we submit the question to county council.
Okay, so, and we're discussing it now, so go ahead.
I just have to interject that since county council is representing the opposing side, it may not be the appropriate legal counsel to check with on such a decision. So I just wanted
The
to.
district council.
Thank you. Oh,
Will
thank
you
very much.
accept that change?
Yes.
As a second?
Yes.
So we're not,
Right.
there's, the motion right now is to have a straw poll on whether we should even just move this to council advice, not to actually do any kind of direction.
So I spoke with council today and can share a little bit about what they shared with me. And one thing that I was concerned with was whether or not we were necessarily perceived as the county. So would this action then be perceived as the county essentially suing itself? The county council that I spoke with said that districts in the past have gone up against county, so there's not an issue in that regard. So if that's one of the things that we're concerned about, we don't need to be concerned about it in that degree.
Did you talk to county council or district council?
I'd say county council. So,
Maybe just for clarity on
Yeah.
a couple of things, only because I read that writ and studied it, and that was why we. So that's all fine, you know, but just to say the CSD is not the county. The CSD is a separate entity. So if it has any concerns with a county policy, it's not suing itself. It has a right to bring it separately as a different, interest.
That's not right.
And that's just on any subject. And just for clarity, also, there was a reference, just for the record or for the minutes, that this is a political group that doesn't affect, actually, this is just, quite honestly, this is about the CEQA did the CSD fiscal needs and sustainability get properly studied when the county passed this policy? Now, that is my understanding, that it's just a matter of maybe they will address the fiscal impact study or not. But this is in my view, there's no political aspect to the SECRA errors, but that's just my opinion from reading the red thing. So anyway, there are lawyers in this room, I know, but I just wanted to sort of parse that language so it was not misrecorded in the record and as anything
Can we, sorry.
like that. Okay.
Mine's pretty brief. Are we supposed to say our names? I don't know. Okay, I'm Lisa Culbertson. Anyway, I haven't studied that question specifically in depth, but just throwing out there, it is something that we should get advice upon, but I do believe that it's not always political. You have a legal right, and if you have been injured, legally, of course, you have a legal right as an individual or as a body. The CSD can participate as a party in a lawsuit if it has been injured. And I think if you're talking about a violation of CEQA law, there are implications that go beyond the political and that we could, without violating an ethical duty, take part in. And I think that question should be put before a council, and we should get informed opinion on whether or not that would be political and violating something if we participated in it. It should be assumed.
Bill, one of the aspects of the thing I think that should be discussed with the attorney also is the idea of the financial impact to the CSD. And that is something that, if it is not evaluated in terms of any project that is proposed, the CSD should have the ability to go ahead and say, challenge that particular project when it does not give the CSD the appropriate amount of revenue, just like it would be for schools, to go ahead and perform the services that you're required to perform for that additional housing that might come into an area, or project that might come into an area. If the county is passing the policy which allows for this to happen with no mitigation for it, then you should be able to go ahead and challenge that. And that's what in effect is happening with this housing element.
Hi, I'm an MCA officer as well as a homeowner in Lucas Valley Homeowners Association. Now, I do pay my tax that goes to CSA 13, which contracts with you to do fire services, fire and emergency services. So I play two roles. So my question to the board is, especially the people who have been here, is do you know what the fiscal impact would be if there's 600 plus units coming into this valley?
I want to stay, I'm going to let that be rhetorical for a second.
Or
open, it's a standing question.
Okay.
Sorry, bear with me. Because we have a motion on the table specifically about an issue, and I don't want to get sidetracked into a different discussion about that as a general topic. So, well, straw polls are basically just kind of going around the table and saying what we think.
I think we should talk to our district attorney.
What was the question of the straw poll?
The question is the question is just to see if we want to get council advice.
The question is to see what I meant to ask is, if the majority of the board is interested in pursuing making a donation, then before we decide about it, we should talk to council first.
Okay,
So the
we
straw
still-
poll is, do you think we can afford to make a substantial donation to this? And do you think it's appropriate to use MCSD money?
So I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing a couple of things right now from, I understand the comments about the sort of advocacy side reasoning. I've heard a couple different angles on that. I hear the district manager's position that it's the tax base of the district is basically taxing people to do park and rec and fire services, and is it appropriate to use that money in a representational way to address a housing issue? I understand the circular argument about the effect return back on the budget, so I accept that, hear that. I also want to represent that I had a call about this, so I'll just throw it from a resident who also is a past board member for a long time, Walter Dodds, who felt very strongly that this was not something, I think he was arguing along the lines, and he just stepped in here, I'm sorry, I was trying to get his attention, but along the lines of what the manager's position was, and he's an attorney as well, so I just wanted to share that with the board. So I'm sensing, and then the other side of this would be the financial impact issue of just whether we even have $50,000 to contribute.
I think Terry's question, she's combining two questions together. Really, I think you simplify it, just say, should we talk to an attorney or should we not talk to an attorney? And forget about, until you get that advice, whether or not you want to go forward. To put both questions together is kind of prejudicing the outcome.
Not necessarily, because I don't see any point in spending the money on an attorney's opinion about this if the sense of the board is that we can't afford it, no matter how much we believe in the cause. If we can't afford it, there's no sense spending money on an attorney to tell us that we shouldn't do it.
Okay, so that's what's on the agenda. So I'm just going to take one more question, then we're going to.
Okay, so a couple of things. I think it does, when you combine two things and you're having a vote on two distinct things, then it's like each member has to agree upon both things at the same time. So I kind of agree with Stephen. I think you should vote, I agree with Terry too. I think there should be a consensus that this is worth something pursuing. We have the ability to pursue it fiscally, but I don't think you should put it you should frame it as 50,000. That's a suggested donation. Even if it were 5,000, that was realistic. Whatever the amount should be, whether or not we believe, the board believes as a group, that this is something that's appropriately actionable by the CSD. And the last point I was going to make is, my point is if the interests of the CSD specifically are injured, you have a right to be a party or participate in an action that's involved in a lawsuit without it being framed politically. It can be separate from the greater political picture of the housing element. And I think that you need an attorney's opinion, because I think there's been a lot of conjecture and personal assumptions about it being political.
Okay, so but then you have to, then we have to understand, I guess, directed to the board, in what way is the injury constituted? Is the injury specifically to money that is part of our budget, which is park and recreation and firefighting dollars? Wouldn't that be isn't that the injury if there is an injury?
It would be the injury. I think that these services are impacted when there's an unsustainable development that's being proposed in the community.
And pre-approved.
And pre-approved without the fair process.
Right.
So I think we're getting the general notions.
Yeah, and furthermore, there'll be other issues as well. So I think maybe getting definition from the attorney what you can and cannot do would be useful going forward. So I recommend just keeping this question simple. Do you want to talk to an attorney or do you not want to talk to an attorney?
So should the straw poll first be if we wish to potentially support?
One second. Do you want to modify your motion or drop it or do anything?
Would you just take a straw poll? Do we think
Sure.
we can
I think we're halfway through.
donation?
I think we're saying yes, talk to attorney, yes, talk to an attorney. What's your position, sir?
My position is we can't afford it, and if the board majority wants to do it, then we should definitely talk to an attorney before we do it.
Okay, what's your position?
I think we should talk to an attorney, and I think it's something that we should definitely look into pursuing.
Okay. Well, to round it out,
Let me
yeah.
say something, since I haven't said anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you did that for Bill, but go ahead.
I spent a lot of time reading through this and talking to people about it. And I also attended, I did not go to the supervisor meeting where they approved the housing element, but I did attend the planning commission meetings, and there was a overwhelming number of people from the Marinwood community. Most people giving opinions against approving the housing element in its current state, and very valid opinions, and not all do pertain to the CSD, but there are some very valid impacts on the CSD, and I feel that every comment made from people in the community was ignored by the planning commission, and I don't know about the supervisors, but they went on to approve it the way that it was without any changes, any further analysis. There were, I think it says in here how many letters there were, 250 letters, or 120 comment letters, sorry. And there were many, I mean, I wrote a couple of letters myself. In reading through here, there are some very specific impacts cited in this writ that are specifically in line with the CSD and what the roles of the CSD are. And I do think that there will be impacts to the CSD. And so I am in favor of pursuing, talking to getting a legal advice on it. What I would like to do as a board, because I know that we have financial issues, is look at if we are going to commit money. Well, I have questions around committing money, and maybe I need to take those offline and talk about how, can we commit money to something if it's not in the budget? Can it be in this budget cycle? Does it have to be in the next budget cycle? So, just because I'm new to the board, so I don't know. So how that would work, and I also think that we need to look at, if we do commit monies, ways to make up the money that we commit as an offset. But there's I believe that there will be impact, and we should pursue these questions and get the answers and bring it back to the board in the next meeting for a vote.
I'm going to just be the taskmaster here, schedule master a little bit in terms of the fact that we're 45 minutes past our agenda items at the moment. So again, not to mean to say that this is an important item. Do you have a quick comment? Because I'll throw in my straw poll.
Just something that you said. I think it was addressed in the writ that if the lawsuit is successful, and if Liz or Maine could correct me if I'm misstating anything, if the lawsuit is successful, then there's potential for the funds to be returned to CSD.
No.
Or,
Yeah, attorney fees. Yes, if we do prevail and attorney's fees are awarded, then proportionally you would receive
The money would come right back.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So not the full amount
I'm
necessarily.
sorry.
Depends on how they work.
I think we need to move on.
It's a cost of portion, yeah.
I'm gonna, so my straw poll, or whatever thing would be that, I think I'm basically gonna agree with Terry in terms of the fact that, I have an overarching financial concern. I think there's an immediate financial impact that this would have on us of whatever degree. I think that our challenge with the label of a community services district is that it often, to those who are just in the neighborhood, feel like we're just generally representative of the whole community, and that's a dangerous kind of misconception of kind of our role. So I would agree with the district manager that it's if I were someone that we represented to be sort of shepherding their funds for Park and Rec and Fire, and that particular neighbor, community member had a strong opinion to the opposite of this, that they would have a case to be able to say, you're misrepresenting, you're going outside of your, what you're supposed to represent me on, and you're not using the money that I'm paying you to the right purposes. So I'm going to fall kind of to that side. So I don't think it's necessary, but sounds like we might have a majority of the
And I
votes.
think that that's the important question to ask the lawyer, not are we in violation of, or in, are we consider, conflict of interest
Or
with
outside of our
with the
jurisdiction.
county? What is really our, are we outside of our jurisdiction by approving this or by participating in this lawsuit? And are there any potential legal ramifications for us if we do participate in this lawsuit?
Well, I think it is incumbent upon the board, despite sorry, I'm just going to,
I think there's a differentiation between participation and donation, voluntary donation. We're not asking this board to be part of the lawsuit. We're asking them to give us funds for the lawsuit.
actually, no, I accept that, but that can also be interpreted by someone as support. So, but I'm going to close the conversation about this because we're just so far, we need to move. So, we are, I think we've already had a straw poll, so are we voting on just, maybe we don't even have to, I don't even know if this has to be a motion. I think
I'll
it's just
withdraw the motion.
Okay, so the motion is withdrawn,
Will
but I
you
think there's a
withdraw your
direction.
second?
I think there's a direction to the district manager to
Yes, to give us an opinion about the appropriateness of us donating or signing this kind of an action. And I would like to not pay Greg to review that entire writ, which could get very expensive and be too narrow a question.
Greg is our non-county counsel, is our separate retained independent attorney.
And a member of the community. So I guess we have a direction to Tom to,
And he just goes by Greg, he doesn't know the last name.
yeah, I can't pronounce it.
Could you just clarify? So Tom is going to ask Greg to,
Give us an opinion.
Report to the district manager, report back to the board on,
so he doesn't just simply write it to the board?
He,
Yeah, I will
report
ask.
back,
Yeah.
Greg will give us a written opinion
Right.
of the appropriateness.
Okay.
Will the board take the questions to ask Greg, or will board members be present?
Well, we
I'll do
couldn't
it.
do that without a noticed agendized meeting, but I think,
The question is, you send him the stuff that's on the agenda here, and a copy of the writ, which we will specifically ask him not to read all of.
yeah, he's not
Because
commenting on the
we're not discussing the merits, we're discussing
The jurisdiction.
the jurisdiction and the appropriateness of direction of taxpayer funds.
Yeah, because we'd like to know.
No,
This is gonna keep coming up, we know that.
okay,
Is
so,
it within
okay, so
jurisdiction,
let's
is it the political question within the jurisdiction question?
I think
Well,
we're discussing this again.
my concern is the way that Tom presented the argument. I mean, I just think that maybe he said it was political, and he had his own slant on whether or not it's appropriate. I just think that maybe someone that has a different point of view would be more appropriate to ask the questions of the attorney.
Point made. Good.
Addressing that, can a board member work with Tom on?
Any board member can talk to our counsel. It's helpful if we aren't just
Yes,
kind
it
of
actually-
randomly calling him
Yeah,
loosely.
yeah, we actually, yeah, we try to do that.
So if you want to talk with Tom directly about coordinating with that discussion or facilitating and making your voice heard, there's no problem with that. We're just trying to do it in a way that doesn't have a whole bunch of separate conversations.
Would we be, should we as a board pick a point person for that necessarily, or is that necessary?
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
If you're looking for your own information and you want to report that back to the board in the next conversation about this, since it's going to come back.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
Okay.
And if at any time, just again, in terms of the Brown Act, if you want to convey what you would consider to be just information to the board, factual kind of information, not so much get a debate started about something, but
Expressly not an argument.
right. What you can do is, send that material or information or whatever it is to the district manager and ask the district manager to distribute it all to board members. So at least we can be apprised of something before a meeting without actually kind of having a secret meeting or debate.
Right, we just can't do, you know, reply to alls, and we can't mix it up and discuss it in email, but we can certainly be presented with facts.
Okay,
So-
I'm gonna
By
move
anyone.
on.
Well, I think for the sake of MTA's satisfaction regarding the issue, do we want to make an approval or decide to try to make an approval for next meeting? I know that, this is a time-sensitive issue.
It would be on the agenda, I imagine it will be on the agenda since we've actually asked for a receipt, so it may be the January meeting.